Well, I'd love to talk about that. It was a surprise to all of us involved with Alien that this young man named Jim Cameron had written a sequel to Alien on spec, which when he went for a meeting with our producers who were looking for some other movie, he said, "Oh, by the way, I've written this script." And they thought, well, who is this guy? And he'd already written Terminator, but I don't think, he'd only directed Piranha 2. So,
another good sequel.
Right. Anyway, so they read it and they flipped, and like a couple of months later, I received in the mail where I was working in France this incredible script for this movie from this man I'd never met and never had a conversation with, and we've been working together ever since.
So yeah, we'll have Sigourney back up with Alison Wilmore from BuzzFeed to do that conversation after the movie, and can we just take a second and appreciate that right now, on the first Alien Day, we're like 1,500 people, and we're all about to fucking watch Aliens. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. We're going to get on stage, like you're going to come down, and we're going to have an amazing time. See you after.
That adrenaline is in the script, and it just blew me away. And also, emotionally, we'd never really got to know Ripley in that courage and her, that she's earned the right to stay alive. And of course, it's not in this version, but Ripley had a daughter she outlived, and so there was all that going on too. But I think I think in a situation like that, you figure out what to do next, and then you do that. And it's not, you don't have time for emotions or reflection, and maybe you don't want to have time for that. So action is the logical way to go, rather than throwing up your hands and waiting to be found and, made into a host. So I mean, she's just sort of so galvanized by everything that happens, and
the aliens are they have this kind of nightmare version of childbirth is how they reproduce the chest bursters. But then you have in the movie it kind of like opposes that with this like kind of maternal relationship that Ripley has with Newt. And as you said in the director's cut, there's also details about Ripley's daughter, that she kind of missed her whole life while she was like drifting in space. Do you see that this is a movie that's kind of about motherhood, that it's about that relationship, that's the emotional core?
Well, I think it even goes further than that to the Queen. There's even her desire to protect her creatures, and so I think the face-off between the two mothers in that what I think Jim called the Queen's Chambers or something is one of my favorite scenes. It was a little dizzying to shoot because I had so much responsibility. I had like 3 guns at that point. And I had like real stuntmen hanging around, and I had dummies hanging around. I had to make sure that I flamed the dummies. Shot with blanks the stunt guys, and then used the bazooka or whatever it is, and it was very cathartic for someone who had been working for gun control. You kind of get to like it.
You have such great chemistry with Michael Biehn in this movie. And that relationship is such a great mixture of like this mutual admiration for their shared competence and just a bit of flirtiness. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
He's such a great guy, Michael, and he's so wonderful in this part. And I think the part of Hicks is just a beautifully written part of this very cool, you know, Marine with great heart and strength and intelligence. In Neil Blomkamp's sequel, you see a lot more of them together. So you guys would like to see? It'll happen. We have to wait till after Prometheus 2 is made and we get to start.
You worked with Neil Blomkamp and Chappie. You've worked with James Cameron multiple times. You've worked with Ridley Scott as well. Is that something that's important to you, to be able to have these ongoing collaborations with directors?
You know, I love working with each of these directors. They're all so brilliant and unique in their own way, and it's really nice when you work with the same director again, because you kind of have a shorthand. You know, you kind of have been in the trenches together before, and you know it's going to work out. You have to give it all you got. I really, I'm always thrilled to work with. I actually just did something else with Neil in South Africa that I can't tell you much about, but again, it was so awesome. It's just such a kick-ass story. I'm so excited about it, and but eventually, you know, and I certainly wish Ridley all the best with Prometheus 2 or whatever it's being called now, and you know, I think, you know, if you do a good job, I mean, it's not really to me about the franchise, but that this you know, no one, I think, dared to do a sequel to Aliens. It's so impossible to top. And yet this has a very different world to it, and I think it's really compelling, and I'm very excited about it. But each one of these directors is so unique, and you know, they have a vision that's just very special. I think especially you can see it when a director also writes the piece. I think it really becomes, to me, for them, such a personal film.
I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of come up today in the news, a bit about like Ripley's look, because she is one of the rare, I think, still rare women in an action movie who is actually dressed for doing action and not, you know, wearing thigh-high boots and a battle corset.
It's in the next one, though.
Can you tell me a bit about, you know, being actually dressed for action and kind of not necessarily having, I don't know, your character being prioritized for getting glammed up? She doesn't need to be.
No, it's an interesting thing. I mean, you know, working with Jim, he's so, he loves women. He loves women as they are, you know, just you know, the whole gorgeous, natural woman. And he has such a great record of, you know, creating these amazing parts. And, you know, it just never even, I mean, for me, I would never have wanted to go there. You know, I don't want to horrify the audience. I'm sure I wore a little makeup. You can see it sometimes. But I mean, you know, it has to be real. I mean, you wouldn't be thinking about any of those things. So, and I'm so happy to work with a director. All of these directors, none of them would ever say, well, I think, you know, maybe if you know, that it would be more attractive if you did it this way or something. No one, you know, has ever said that to me, and I don't think I'd take it well. And I love the honesty of just her and what she has to do. I feel very blessed that I was working with a director who just wanted that, you know. And I remember I said that to my husband, who's here tonight. When you're going down the elevator, I remember we talked about that moment where she has to, you know, put the guns together and kind of transform into this warrior. And it was such a great moment. And I don't think I anticipated what a powerful transition that was in the movie. I mean, because I'm basically just taking the elevator down. But at the time, even in those shots, I felt that something was happening to Ripley, that she was kind of really arming herself inside as well as outside.
I know that the actors who played the Marines did some training together. They did like a boot camp, a mini boot camp. What did you do to prepare? And did you kind of feel like you were coming to them as the person, the newcomer that Ridley was when coming to this group?
Well, I would have loved to do that with them, actually, but I was working on a movie called Half Moon Street that finished like the Friday before. So I missed the whole, I missed that whole process, but it's probably for the best, where all the Marines kind of became a unit and they figured out their costumes and they figured out who did what, and I think it was very, very important for them to have those 2 or 3 weeks. And it was sort of perfect that I come in from nowhere and I don't know anything, and I might as well have been asleep. But I didn't get that. I was sort of catapulted into the world, and in fact, I'd read the script so quickly, and I've been so busy that I get excited when I read a script. I don't always read all the stage directions. And so, very early on, we had this scene suddenly where it was all about guns. And I said, well, Jim, I'm so sorry. I don't think I quite noticed all this gun stuff. I'm really against guns or gun control. And he said, I think you better reread this. All guns, all the time. And he sent me off to practice with the machine gun and the flamethrower and all that stuff. Because I said, a couple of sessions of that, and then you kind of are digging it. So much for my principles. But I mean, in the real world, I am still for gun control.
Did you have a favorite of the different options? Because the flamethrower looks pretty sweet.
I have to tell you that Jim Cameron designed those guns. He designed the smart guns, which they're carrying. These guns are so heavy, and when you take them all together, they're really heavy. So that's all I could remember was the stair. We were at the Acton Power Station in the winter outside of London. It was very wet and very cold, and I just remember trying to go down these slippery stairs with a lit flamethrower day after day after day. We were there quite a long time, and that's what I remember. I went, God, I'm so glad that that's done. But no, it was cool.
This movie cost $18 million, I believe, which is a number that, even with inflation, I think sounds low compared to budgets these days. And I guess I was just wondering it was like a 10-month shoot, I believe. If you have any other kind of memories that come up, or maybe that came up while watching the movie again from the production.
Maybe the whole pre-production and production was 10 months, but I think we started shooting the end of October, and I think we were finished by the end of February. So all of that other work was done without us. But what was the question? I'm so sorry.
If you had just any memories, if you have any strong memories from the production, or any that came up when you were watching the movie.
You just feel part of such an incredible crew. You know that if one of the reasons people love to work with Jim Cameron, even though he's very exacting, is that you have to bring your best game. He won't accept anything less, certainly not from himself or from anyone, really. But it's also tremendously exciting and inspiring. We actually had a kind of difficult time in England because Ridley Scott had directed the first one, the crew, because Terminator had not come out in England, I don't think. It had come out in America. So the crew was sort of like, what the fuck is this guy, this Canadian guy walking in the footsteps of the great Ridley Scott? And Jim Cameron kept trying to set up screenings for them to watch Terminator so they can see what the action movie was doing. And maybe Piranha 2 too, I don't know. And they never went. And it took them 2 or 3 weeks before they realized how lucky they were to be working with this guy. But he had to fight. He had to fight to get them to sort of make that, to accept him, I think. You know, we had an AD who kept calling him governor. And he'd say, please don't call me governor. And the guy would say, all right, governor. And it pissed him off. So we had, and Gail Ann Hurd was right there. They'd just gotten married too. And so they were awesome together. And Gail especially, because it was a tense shoot. There was a lot to get done. And it was big and dangerous, and you know, everyone needed to be really frosty. But Gail really, I remember one meeting where she just took over, and she was just so cool and calm, very Ripley-like. Just, you know, doing what a good producer does, which is just sort of, you know, very diplomatically making it all, everyone go in the same direction.
You have starred in some iconic sci-fi movies and one great sci-fi spoof in Galaxy Quest. I'm wondering how, like, what your relationship has been like to the genre, especially now that it's kind of descended to like one of the primary ones that you find in the theater these days.
You know, I like science fiction more and more because to me it's like one of the few spaces in the business where you can actually tell a really original story. And I don't think it gets any respect in the business yet. You know, I feel like critics don't know how to review these movies. They don't understand all the thinking behind them. They don't appreciate what Jim Cameron said. That this is an exploration of what it is to be human. This is an exploration of what happens when you don't take care of climate change and all these other things. This is an exploration of the future as it may be, and I think it's a really exciting genre. And science fiction is kind of a strange term for it. It's so old-fashioned. I don't know, you guys should come up with another one. But anyway, it's sci-fi, and I've become more and more interested in it just as an earthling, because I feel like we're beginning to think of ourselves as a planet, and we are actually probing, you know, Alpha Centauri and all this stuff. So space is becoming more and more of a place where we could actually go and live, and I hope we don't have to do that because we screw up our own planet. But anyway, to me, sci-fi becomes more and more immediate the longer I live.
I think we have some microphones set up for questions from the audience. But before we do that, I did want to ask you as well, what do you think happened to Jones the cat?
That's a good question. I think I got him a good home. Maybe one of my cellmates on that nasty corridor I'm living. And I think then when we get back, we pick up Jones. The three of us, maybe the four of us.
We have questions? Oh, we have a line.